there is an attempt going on for color revolution in over there in China, but the big one, of course, right now is Russia. I would point out the following things here. Let's go back a little bit. The people who were out there in the demonstrations in Moscow, there's a big demonstration, big tens of thousands, right? So what, 20,000, 30,000 on the 24th of December, which is not Christmas Eve in Russia at all, because of the Orthodox Church calendar. But a lot of these people are between 20 and 40 years old. They don't know what happened in the 1990s. Let's remind a little bit. We're also marking 20 years since the fall of the USSR, and I think the conclusion we'd have to draw is it would have been better for the USSR to remain in existence, or at least most of it. The USSR destroyed by what? By Austrianism, by the Austrian school, the libertarian school of political economy that we've been discussing earlier. And we'll be back in a minute here on World Crisis Radio. Let's use our last segment to say a few things about Russia. What was going on in Russia in the 1990s, right? Why did the Soviet Union collapse? Well, it was the August 1991 coup done by the State Committee for the Emergency Situation with Yanayev and others. The interesting thing was that coup by the conservative, the people who wanted the Communist Party USSR status quo failed. Yeltsin, with the help of U.S. State Department and others, succeeded in prevailing with all the help of all the international media. But most of the Union republics, the 15 Union republics of the USSR, supported the coup government. They supported the Yanayev and company regime in Moscow that was seeking to oust and arrest Gorbachev. Kravchuk in the Ukraine, Karimov in Uzbekistan, and Mutalibov in Azerbaijan, in particular, saw that when Gorbachev not so much prevailed, but when he was eclipsed by Yeltsin, who was also playing the Russian nationalist card against the Soviet patriotism card, they saw that if they remained inside the Soviet Union, they might be prosecuted for taking part in this coup, for having supported Yanayev and company. So what Kravchuk, Karimov, Mutalibov, and others did was to lead their republics out. There was no popular movement to break up the Soviet Union except in the Baltic states and in Georgia. Everywhere else, there was a democratic movement or nationalist movement with other demands. These guys, Kravchuk, Karimov, Mutalibov, led their republics out, and this then led to Gorbachev and Yeltsin embracing the idea of breaking up the Soviet Union. It was the nomenclatura, the oligarchy of these Union republics that saved itself by wiping out the USSR. In Ukraine, in April 1991, almost 80% of Ukraine voted to remain inside the USSR. April 1991, and this was overwhelmed by this desire of the nomenclatura, the oligarchs to remain, the party oligarchs in this case, to remain in power, to become the oligarchs of privatization and so forth. Shock therapy played a role in this too. Shock therapy had been announced by Yeltsin and by Gaidar, his prime minister, the 28th of October, 1991, a couple of months after the failure of the August coup. Shock therapy, the IMF, the Washington Consensus, deregulation, privatization, union busting, no more social safety net, race to the bottom, came to Russia. Now, a lot of people in the Central Asian republics, right, somebody like Nazarbayev was smart enough to say, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I guess I better leave too. And the original operations of these people tended to confirm that. Gaidar, the pro-IMF puppet prime minister working for Yeltsin, raised prices by 250% 20 years ago in January 1992. A great fear went across in the land. And these people that are today posing as Democrats, Chubais, Nemtsov, they were part of the shock therapy coalition. They were the pro-IMF, pro-Jeffrey Sachs, pro-Anders Aslund gang that came in there. The result of this was a price reform that led to hyperinflation of 1,354% in 1992 and 896% in 1993. Agricultural production went down by 20%, minus one-fifth. The USSR economy shrank in the gross domestic product minus 44%, minus 44%. Industrial production went down minus 56%. And the U.S. comparison, U.S. in the World Depression, 1929 to 1933, was down about 30%. So the Russian industrial production was down almost twice what we had here in the United States in the Great Depression. That is what Chubais and Nemtsov and these wonderful reformers, the people behind Navalny, behind the wonderful Facebook, Twitter, savvy, golden youth, young oligarchs, young wolves, whatever we want to call them, institutchiki of the second generation. Gaidar declared permanent privatization and permanent deregulation, sort of on the model of Trotsky's permanent revolution. The Russian middle class was reduced to hawking their possessions at subway stops. I saw it in December of 1993. The collapse of the social order, a complete social breakdown, was brought close. So if you want to go down the Austrian road, there it is. Dear Decembrists of Moscow, think what you're doing. The original Decembrists were rather confused people, right? They said Constantine and Constitution. That was their candidate to replace the Tsar. Most of the troops thought that Constitution, Constitutia, was Constantine's wife. The current level, not much better. What Putin is doing, obviously highly preferable, building the South Stream pipeline. That's economic development. That's serious stuff. Now, what should we do in 2012? We'll have more about this from week to week. First of all, for Iowa, people in Iowa, vote uncommitted. You can vote uncommitted. The rules of the Democratic Party, and I went through this at that meeting that they had here, the fight between Hillary and Obama 4 years ago, this coming summer. You can vote uncommitted in the Iowa caucus. Go there and express your dislike, your dissatisfaction with the results of the Obama regime by voting uncommitted. Lean on Obama. Send Obama a message. And in all the other states where uncommitted is possible, organize uncommitted slates. Get into the Democratic primary with uncommitted delegates. You can get those on the ballot, and certainly wherever there are caucuses, there will be an Iowa Democratic caucus. The media don't want to tell you that, but there will be one. The other possibility, can we prepare a New Deal independent candidate? And they say, it'll take votes away from Obama. Not if Obama is smart enough to incorporate most of the program into his own program. The biggest reservoir of votes in the United States is New Deal America to the left of the current Democratic Party, not between the Democrats and the Republicans, not in this area that looks like the goal of Americans elect with their secret committee that makes secret decisions about who's an acceptable bipartisan candidate. We don't need a bipartisan candidate. We need a New Deal candidate. So Americans elect just got on the California ballot. They may be the vehicle for Ron Paul, for Trump, or possibly some New Deal candidate. Let's see what that might look like. That would be a good thing. The policy goal, I think, is clear. Nationalize the Fed, not end the Fed. Don't say end the Fed. That's nonsense. That means give all power to Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase, Blankfein of Goldman Sachs, Moynihan of Bank of America, Pandit the Bandit of Citibank. No, that's not the goal. Nationalize the Fed. We need the inherent creative credit-creating power of the state, of the U.S. government, to be mobilized to get us out of this depression. Credit creation for national infrastructure, great projects, and job creation and economic recovery. That's what we need in 2012. We got Draghi of the European Central Bank lends money to European zombie banks at 1%, and these are all bankrupt institutions who cannot offer collateral. He should be lending to the national states and regional development authorities who can offer collateral. And that should be done at as close to 0% as you can get, and the maturities as long as these projects are supposed to last. For example, here in the United States, the Fed has to cough up $1 trillion of century bonds, 100-year maturities, to rebuild the entire rail system, highway system, water system, electrical system, and so forth. What's the collateral? The collateral is there. It's the railway system, not some disgusting paper that's going to be put up by some crazy derivatives merchant. The immediate goal, oust the fascist Walker in Wisconsin. Get him out. Let him taste defeat in the same way that the fascist Kasich tasted defeat in Ohio on election night. But remember, vote uncommitted in the Democratic primary. Send Obama a message. We're not happy with Obama, and maybe a independent candidacy could come out of that. And we'll see you next week on World Crisis Radio.